Namaskar. Hello and welcome to P Guru's channel. I'm your host Sri Iyer. This is episode 377 of Daily Global Insights. Please like this video because we are going to share a lot of information that has not been yet talked about in the mainstream media. And to keep moving this forward, let's welcome our co-host Sridhar Chityalaji. Sridharji, namaskar and welcome to P Guru's channel, sir.
Namaskar. Good morning to everybody. Happy to be here.
Before we start looking at events around the globe, there's a breaking news that I'd like to share with our viewers. The Madras High Court has granted the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh 44 of the 50 routes that it had applied for to conduct processions in Tamil Nadu. This was supposed to have been part of Dashera celebrations, but at that time the government denied and they couldn't do it. And the government relented and said on 6th November, you can do processions in 3 routes. They only gave 3 out of the 50. So the RSS proceeded and moved the Madras High Court. And now the Madras High Court has said you can have processions in 44 of the 50 routes. This is a big deal because at every step of the way, it has been seen that the DMK government has been trying to place impediments in the way of the RSS. And this is not the first time it has happened. But what has changed this time is that the Madras High Court said, look, the intelligence reports don't suggest the kind of doomsday scenarios that you are projecting. And therefore, they have allowed this. In fact, if much of this would not have happened, in my opinion, Sridharji, if it was not for the front foot batting by Sri K. Annamalai, the BJP Tamil Nadu president, because he tore apart some of the arguments, said that you guys are just, first of all, you're asleep at the wheel as far as the Coimbatore blasts were concerned, and then you are just trying to find new excuses. So a lot of stuff has happened, but this is the most important development today. So stay tuned for more updates. Let's now go into the main programming. Sridharji, take it away, sir. Let us start with the interest rates by US and UK by 0.75%. This is the Sunaconomics.
I think that the beep was coming, so I just got distracted. 75 basis points, as we predicted. The Fed hiked the rates. 75 basis points. Bank of England hiked the rates. And today was the jobs day, and that was the beep on the phone. Is not going to help because it's very positive numbers. So 261,000 is the 251 or 261. I missed the number. Is the employment new payroll numbers, which only means that higher inflation also means that their unemployment target will not be achieved. So brace yourself for more hikes, and the market is taking a hit. If you take a look at the 10-year government securities of the G7 countries, doesn't matter whether it is Germany, Japan, UK, US, they're all in the high band rates, which will cascade itself into your mortgage rates. That's the headline news on the market, Sriji.
Thank you, sir. And in Europe news, many Central and Eastern European nations are now beginning to move away from China for its stance in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. And Russia joins a grain deal with Ukraine despite being in war with them. And Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant has been disconnected from the grid after Russian shelling damages its batteries, leaving with just diesel power. So together, this is all around the Russia-Ukraine conflict. This frenemy is now, sir, Russia and Ukraine?
Well, I think the one of the other important news items which is not being publicized is the Russian economy is not doing well. It is contracting, which is officially confirmed by the Russians themselves. Of course, if the contraction was 4% or 5%, they would say it is 2% or 2.5%. Whatever the numbers are, as far as Russia and China is concerned, you can possibly write it on water. But the Russian economy has contracted. They have challenges. Vladimir Putin himself has stated that there is some pain. It is expected to contract again next year. So therefore, he has no choice, and food security is an issue for him as well. He needs precious money. So he's back at the table and allowing shipments to go through jointly with the Ukrainian shipments, which is much needed in several parts of the world. I think he's also fearful by doing these types of things that any goodwill that he enjoys, he may lose with many of the countries, notably Africa.
And German Chancellor Olaf Scholz has his first in person visit with Xi Jinping in China to discuss ways to partner with them. We all remember that a couple of days back or a couple of episodes ago, Sridharji had mentioned about the Hamburg port. Sridharji, this we are already predicted he was going to go to China. The other interesting thing is he going to also stop by Japan, sir?
Yes, he is. I think that he is. He probably transited on his way, Japan first, and then Germany later. The most important, he was received in the Great Hall by Mr. Xi Jinping. I will now from now on call him Emperor Xi Jinping, and he basically embraced him wholeheartedly, and he said Germany and China are great nations. We have a great history. We must embrace and work together. And there's a lot of geopolitical changes taking place. That was the grandstand of Mr. Xi Jinping. And of course, Mr. Olaf Scholz responded before touching on Russia, Ukraine to say, we can, all these people, climate accord, food security, co-development of businesses, etc. Remember, folks, that Olaf Scholz has much to gain, especially he comes from the Hamburg area, and he collectively represents the interest of the businesses. I'm not sure much of his coalition members support what he is doing in China.
And G7 foreign ministers commenced talks in Germany on Ukraine and China policy, with Japan pushing for an Indo-Pacific security. A lot of things happening in this G7 foreign ministers meeting, sir. Is this like a precursor to the G20 that is also happening in Indonesia?
Correct. They basically discuss the draft agenda that will be covered. They will also try to see whether they can, ratchet out a kind of a communique statement in preparation. So this will get discussed at the G7, and eventually a communication will come out. Remember, the G20 meeting that occurred in Thailand ended in a disaster, which is effectively nothing came out, because the moment the Russian issue propped up, everybody kind of, began to backpedal, and there was no joint communication. Now, Japan is highlighting the Indo-Pacific security as the topmost agenda item, not even talking about the Russian issue. Well, let's kind of go back, and we have been saying this, where is Quad? Quad is effectively dead. It's just name props up, but it is effectively dead. It's now Indo-Pacific. It's almost like Biden administration has completely washed its hands off. And remember, we used to say that these ships are patrolling. There's another one which went around the Taiwan Strait. There's no more navigation. There's no more patrolling that's happening. We have no idea what's going on. The one piece of news I can say is that has been tweeted, I can't validate, but I have to go by the tweet, that the Chinese vessels, the warships, are being fueled mid-sea by a couple of nations, okay? And because they are in the debt trap. So incidents such as this will not happen if there was Quad navigation, but this is what is going on.
Absolutely. And this has been, highlighted by many, that the Chinese ships cannot go farther than about 1,000 miles from their ports, which is from China. But now, with other countries allowing them to fuel mid-ocean, that increases their range. And that is an area of concern. I don't know how Quad is going to respond to that. So we'll have to wait and see how that goes. Now, let's take a look at the United States midterm elections as things are heating up. Sridharji, now the Democrats are drumming up the abortion ruling. But how can you stick that to the Republicans, sir? That was a Supreme Court ruling.
No, they're making it as an issue. If you don't select us, then we will come up with a law to redraft and overcome, which will not be contested by Supreme Court. We'll make it into a national law. We'll not allow states to deal with this, etc., etc. So this is an emotive issue. Politics is about emotion. They cannot win on the economics. They cannot win on the crime. And so they are focused. They're pouring money into the campaigns. And even the New York governor and the New York mayor, New York state elections for the representatives, the issue has become abortion rather than crime. We are steeped and inundated with challenges arising from crime.
And in Pennsylvania, the Supreme Court has ruled that undated and incorrectly dated votes shall not be counted in the November 8th elections. Sir, does this apply to the rest of the country?
No, only to Pennsylvania. Recall again, we covered this during the elections, and there were number of ballots that were dated after November 4th, and some were even dated November 8th, November 9th during the presidential elections, and they all got counted based on the state secretary's ruling, who is considered as the the presiding officer. And the Supreme Court decided not to take up this issue. Now they have Republicans filed and they've taken it up. So they are going to invalidate and simply state that invalid votes as well as post-dated votes or invalid date votes have to be declined, not counted.
And there is a lot of scrutiny even at the places where you drop off the ballots. That is, those the people who are voting early, they are trying to make absolutely sure that no hanky-panky happens. This is happening in a couple of swing states. So we'll keep you posted on that. We don't have much details today, but there is a lot of stuff happening. This time they are saying that nobody is going to be able to sneak in votes that could be, under the radar. So let's wait and see. Libertarian candidate Mark Victor drops out of Arizona Senate race and endorses Blake Masters against Mark Kelly, the sitting Democratic candidate. So that is another state, another Senate seat where it could swing the Republican way, because the Libertarian also is going endorsing the Republican. I think that is correct. Right, sir? Blake Masters is the Republican candidate, right?
Correct. Blake Masters was in the Trump administration. He was one of the advisors in the Trump committee. So I think he's contesting from Arizona. So libertarians usually split votes. Now the fact that he's asking his supporters to direct the votes mean that the incumbent Democrat, who is actually a space scientist, is in trouble.
And the Senate races in Arizona, Georgia, Pennsylvania, and Nevada hold control over the outcome of the Senate. We touched upon this in our previous episode. We're going to add some more things. In Pennsylvania, the lead of the Democratic candidate is shrinking in favor of Dr. Mehmet Oz, a Turkish American, I believe. And in Nevada, Republican former Attorney General Adam Laxalt holds less than a 2% point lead over the sitting Democratic candidate, Senator Catherine Cortez Masto. So in Nevada, the Republican is actually sitting on a very slender lead. Same is the case in Georgia, where a former football great, Herschel Walker, holds a 1.6% lead over sitting Democratic candidate, Senator Raphael Warnock. Georgia, to me, is very important. Sridharji, please tell us why Georgia is very important.
Georgia is very important because you have two great sisters, the Abrahams. One is the Supreme Court and the other is contesting for mayor. And she has great sway between the sisters. They have great sway. And remember, this is the state which had all kinds of controversy. The all-star game of the football got moved out of Georgia. The birth of wokeism as well as corporations, including Coca-Cola, aligning, and after the backlash, people have begun to little bit backpedal. So therefore, I think this state is very important within the context of, not only the swing, but also, to go generally mainstream. Of course, if you happen to be a woke, I'm sorry, I'm giving an opposite view. I'm certainly not a woke, not supportive of the woke agenda, but that's the way. That's why Georgia is very important, because there's governor, there's secretary, there's the Supreme Court justice. That's a hell of a kind of a combination if you want to completely change the direction of the state when you have that type of power structure in single party's hands.
And in governor races, some surprising results are on the horizon if the polls are to be believed. from Oregon to New York, Minnesota, New Mexico, Kansas, Michigan, and Wisconsin, it looks like it's going to change hands from deep blue to red. Strong campaigns with local, based on the local issue. So all these gubernatorial seats are going to go through purple, like I said in my book, Who Painted My State Purple. Sorry to toot my own horn, but I can't help it. It definitely has made its mark in some people who have actually had the time and patience to read this book and understand how the 2020 elections went. Now, Democrats will be retaining Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, and Maryland, which are their traditional strongholds. So it's a mixed bag, but I think there is a lot for the Republicans to cheer as far as gubernatorial elections are concerned, isn't it, Siddharji?
That's correct. I think it's a very good summary, which is to say this traditional strong, particularly Oregon, Democratic governor is being kicked out because of crime, shutdowns and crime, and looting in shops. Same in Minnesota. Believe it or not, New Mexico is going to shift to Republican governor. So this all means that people have woken up. This includes the Democrats who have woken up to the reality that I don't think that they would want the status quo to continue. Some restoration of the order and mitigate the crimes and bring the states back to normalcy. Also, there's been the woke agenda, critical race theory in schools, which has hurt a number of parents, though it is in that back burner. Amongst all this, still there is that abortion issue which looms. Let us see. Right now, these are poll numbers. Based on these poll numbers, what we are seeing is a trend line, which is even acknowledged by the left.
And in India news, the Reserve Bank of India rate panel will meet in India on Thursday to discuss inflation, as the September numbers showed sustained levels at 7.41% against a target of 4% plus or minus 2% as the acceptable range. Sridharji, RBI has a funny way of raising rates or reducing rates, sir. They use 0.40. Sometimes they even use 0.30. I don't know why they go against the grain.
I think you had asked me this question before. I can't comment on.
I find it odd.
The decimal formula. But the most important point is almost for 7 or 8 months. I think India follows March, that April 1st financial year. So almost for 7 months within their financial year, the rate has been consistently above 7%. Which implies the Monetary Policy Committee or the Rates Committee comes into picture, and they have to submit a report, I believe, to the central government. Their basic inflation handle is 4% plus or minus 2%, so which means you can toggle up to 6%. So they got to do something about it. My view is consistent with other, some of the accommodative governments. They may be a little more flexible, but they will keep a close watch because they do not want this to cascade deep into the economy. So I think we may see a rate hike by December, even in India. Whether it is 0.35 or 0.42, we don't know. But there's probably a rate hike, which looks probably, in my opinion, though I'm not an India expert, in the month of December.
And in other news, Indian Finance Minister launches the biggest coal auction of 141 mines, stepping up the capacity of coal production. After Foxconn, now Pegatron establishes the second Apple manufacturing facility for iPhone 14s. I'm assuming this is in India, Sridharji?
It is. I think it's also coming up in Bangalore, if I am correct. There's Bangalore, and there's also Chennai, which is likely to have an Apple factory. The fact that these things are shifting from traditionally where it used to be China, and also some of them in Taiwan, is a reflection that there's a relocation happening, fearing dislocation in these regions. Of course, clearly China is a no-no by virtue of the policy that the Biden administration is working on in terms of what is allowed and what is not allowed. And they're likely to stop supply of chips. You remember the very important semiconductor chips not to be shipped to China, which in itself is going to create problems. So if TSMC is making chips let us say in US or in Japan, they cannot ship those chips into China if you want to do business with United States. So these kinds of restrictions are forcing manufacturers to move business. It looks like India is certainly becoming a kind of a winner in some of cherry picking some of these industries.
Sridharji, the green energy enthusiasts are going to have nightmares over this tagline: coal is cool.
Coal is back. So therefore, so the coal is saying, I am back. You can't stop me. And coal is everywhere. So I think India ignited and, probably went with 131 new mine auctions, everything taken up. So India is saying we can't afford to have 1.3 billion, 1.4 billion people, feeling the heat. First, we'll solve today's problem, then we'll worry about tomorrow's problem. We have multi-protocol energy. We probably will move towards this zero emission, but let's deal with the issue. So Indonesia is back in coal. Russia is back.
I seem to have lost.
Yeah,
For
can
a
you hear?
moment, I thought I had. For a moment, I thought I had lost you, Sridharji, but I think you're back. It is something to do with my Bluetooth. It goes off after some time. I can't fix it. I keep anyway. Long story short. Now, the next important thing about India, we have a lot of data coming from the service sector. A lot of good numbers being posted there. Sir, how much of this is real growth, and how much of it is a bounce back from COVID?
No, what you are seeing is you will not see the normalization till 2023. So some of this is, especially the services sector growth is as a result of the markets opening up. There's no doubt about it. So we need to kind of go back to next year and see. But there's an item which says that remember we covered this, that Italy and I think UP government collaborating, even Maharashtra government collaborating in the food processing, and Italy setting up food processing capabilities, especially for some of the fruits and tomatoes and those kinds of things. Back last year, we covered this. And so the food processing industry has picked up. And I think India will be exporting close to $15 billion worth of processed food, like cereals and fruits and vegetables and so on, mostly fruits and cereals, which augurs well. I think what India is trying to do, people had asked this question, they're slowly cherry picking away with exports, the high trade imbalance that has come about as a result of the costs, hike in energy costs. So all this helps, 15 billion here, 20 billion here. You continue to drive those exports because the net trade balance as a result of that is positive in favor of India, which will to a great extent address this trade deficit issue.
And India abstains on Russia-sponsored UNSC resolution on usage of bioweapons by Ukraine. So India is now beginning to kind of take a consistent stand on the Ukraine-Russia conflict. They're kind of abstaining, whether it is a resolution passed by Russia or Ukraine. That's how I see it, Sridharji. Any comments?
No, I think what India is saying is Russia is a partner and we will continue to work with them. But we are not accepting the actions that Russia is trying to pursue, and which is what we are communicating in our informal channels through Russia as well. So therefore, some of these actions we don't accept, so therefore we abstain from it, but we're not going to throw them under the kitchen sink, because the only way you can work with them is by continuing to talk to them, hearing them out, etc. So I think you're beginning to see a fairly consistent policy by India, and people are finding it very hard to, negate this.
And in Asia World News, Philippines president drops Russian military deal in favor of a United States helicopter deal in a $216 million deal. So Sridharji, this is again interesting that Philippines is now moving away from Russia. I think this trend will continue because Russian weaponry is being exposed in Ukraine. Would you agree, sir?
Well, I think firstly, not only exposed, they don't have equipment of their own. So
To sell,
they
yes.
sign a deal. They sign a deal. They sign a deal. The Iranians are sending them drones because their production facilities are hurt. So I think what they're doing is that basically Philippines is saying, I could be facing, if you go back to the picture that we put up, which is the arc of islands starting from right up from the Korean Peninsula. It leads all the way into the Spratly Islands and Scarborough Shoal in Philippines. So they're saying, hey, we can't afford to be reliant on somebody who can supply. So we're shifting our allegiance. One of the things that I just want to kind of put a 30-second. Most of
Yes, sir.
these nations, India has already established some kind of a relationship, including a military kind of facility. Yes,
That's the one.
That's the one. The arc of islands, the first island chain. You can see that arc coming all the way into Philippines. Again, you go back to last year, we covered quite extensively a fishing trawler docked in the center, contested by the Chinese, saying that it won't move, and stopping the fishermen from Philippines from doing their normal stuff, and converting some of their patrol boats into effectively a full-fledged naval boats with order to shoot. So therefore, Philippines can't afford to have its shores unprotected and not be reliant on a partner who is in the middle of a war and who's the first priority for him is his own nation. So naturally, they are swinging in their favor towards United States.
And Republicans demand answers from Pentagon based on reports that Pentagon is seeking to end dozens of fighter jets from Japan without creating a new permanent force. So looks like US is withdrawing from several of these places where it used to have a fair amount of presence, sir.
It is. And, when you are lost in the din of noise, so many of these things happen, and strangely, that it doesn't get picked up. Just before we came into the show, myself and Sri Iyer, we were discussing, if you go back to last year, in the last 6 months of 2021, we would have done enough coverage around the number of ships patrolling the South China Sea. Nothing it's gone. So now they're saying they're going to withdraw the squadron from Japan. So what does that mean? The Republicans are asking the question, are you going to give Japan uncharted and unattended for a potential invasion by China?
And in other world news, Bolsonaro urges protesters to lift blockades and restore normalcy in Brazil. Netanyahu is almost ensured of victory now with almost 90% of votes counted. Is he going to have a slender majority or a good majority, sir?
Yeah, I think he's got it. I think he's going to become the prime minister as slender majority.
And in other news, Iran's nuclear deal has no future, according to German coalition official. Iran is going to send hundreds of its COMAT drones to Russia in November. Both Iran and North Korea are stepping up supplies to Russia. With that, we end our news. Sridharji, if you want to conclude for a minute, and then we can wrap up, sir.
No, I think that there's plenty of news. You can see the geopolitical changes, the geopolitical meetings. Everything is focused around one region, and that is in and around the perimeter of China. And of course, the other being diametrically opposite to the other side, the Russia-Ukraine. But it is cascading enough turmoil and enough problems, just as we are trying to come out of COVID.
Absolutely, sir. And that brings us to a close of today's episode. And we'll be back again on Sunday. And we're going to have 3 days a week, Sunday, Tuesday, and is it Friday or Thursday, sir?
Thursday.
So this will be 3 days a week DGI from next week onwards. And we'll look forward to your support. Thank you so much. Please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to click on the bell button for notifications, and also please express your appreciation using the super thanks button. Thank you very much, sir. Namaskar.
Namaskar. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful Friday and Saturday.